Welcome to the Underdog Best Ball Draft Stream. I'm your host, Neil Orfield. You can find me on Twitter at PlayerQDFS. I'm here with Jake Tribbey. You can find him on Twitter at Jake Tribbey. Jake is, if you're not familiar with Jake, he is the Fantasy Football Writer of the Year from 2022. Fantastic writer and also fantastic stream. I've done only one stream with Jake, but I've watched several of Jake's streams. One of the best XFL streamers out there, which of course means a lot to me. I don't love that he's a Houston Roughnecks fan, as you can see on his hat. I'm a hardcore San Antonio Brahmas fan, lifelong San Antonio Brahmas fan. So it's a little bit offensive to me that Jake's coming on here with the Houston Roughnecks hat, but still, I'll forgive him because I really appreciate Jake coming on today. How are you doing today, Jake?
I'm doing great. And hey, man, I mean, what can I say about the Roughnecks? They chose me. You don't choose your favorite XFL team. It kind of finds you. And offensive coordinator AJ Smith follows me on Twitter and is a bit of a fantasy points fan. So
he wore your shirt, right? He wore the fantasy points shirt.
He did, yeah, on an ESPN, like a show on ESPN2 or whatever. It was really cool. So yeah, really don't have much of a choice in terms of what team I wanted to support. It was an unfortunate ending for both of our teams, but I have a lot more optimism headed into 2024 with Tavon Austin now rumored to be on the Houston Roughnecks.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. That's there are a few veterans. I think Darrell Henderson signed with the Renegades. There were a few other veteran moves, and yeah, Austin has expressed some interest in actually playing, and seems like a pretty big slot upgrade to me compared to like Cedric Bird. So I'm excited, man. But yeah, I'm doing great. I'm hyped to do a best ball stream, and NFL is awesome because it just holds us over for until spring football season. So yeah, man, I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely, yeah. NFL. I guess we can deal with some NFL until we can get back in the XFL streets.
Yeah,
I should have. So you're the third consecutive guest I've had on from Fantasy Points. Probably should have broken you guys up a little bit more, tried to separate you, maybe some guests in between. But you guys were all willing to come on, and of course, you just came out with the big Fantasy Points suite. Have you found any great new info from the Fantasy Points data suite? You and any players that you found to be undervalued or overvalued based on your research?
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of awesome stuff in here. We could probably spend the whole hour just talking about the data suite. I know Christian Watson like really popped. We posted fantasy points per route run and expected fantasy points per route run, and Christian Watson like really popped in both. I had a tweet about how if he ran as many routes as DeAndre Carter, who ran like the 41st most routes in the NFL, he would have finished as the wide receiver 8. Now, obviously, extrapolating his efficiency, right. You could argue that's a little bit aggressive, but I mean, Scott Barrett wrote the expected touchdowns article, I think published about a month ago. Christian Watson only exceeded his expectation by about 3 touchdowns, which was far less than I thought. I thought he'd be closer to 5 or 6. So Watson was really efficient. And I think, you can see that in the data suite that, even with a little bit of regression to like towards what an average player was doing, he still would have been really good for fantasy. My favorite thing, though, by far, is that this is just really geared towards fantasy football players. Right. I mean, as a writer, part of what makes fantasy writing takes so long is that you have to back up every sentence with a statistic. And sometimes pulling these stats can take, a really long time. Some manual work in Excel using, 2, 3, 4 different websites just for one stat. And we've really, obviously me, Scott Barrett, Chris Weck, the great team at Fantasy Points, we've really geared this towards fantasy football players. I think if you're an analyst, a serious player, this is just going to save you a ton of time because it's like every great stat from, every site industry wide, plus a bunch of new stuff is all in the data suite. I mean, I'm just excited for all the time it's going to save me in season. It's really, really awesome.
Yeah, I've started digging in a little bit. Yeah, great data here. I will say you kind of you say as a writer, you got to say as a fantasy football writer of the year is how you have to say that. But all right, we should hop into a draft as we talked about before. I do have a little bit of I have the time constraints today, so we should hop into a draft. We're gonna do another Best Ball Mania draft, and as I've told everybody on these streams, my plan is I'm not going to ask you for any money, but I'm only going to pay you out if we win at least $10,000. Are you good with that plan?
Totally good with that. I mean, I figure we'll just win the $3 million, make it nice and simple.
Exactly. Just
could be a bit of a tax issue for you, but that's not my problem. I'm just a guest. So
people do like split action all the time. That was my concern. It's like I don't know how to deal with the taxes. Apparently, it's pretty straightforward. Unfortunately for you, you will have to pay taxes on your side of things as well when we split this $3 million. Sorry.
I had no idea what the tax implications were there, but glad to hear it's straightforward considering I have done multiple split drafts with people.
Right. shoot, I did not go ahead and update our rankings. So I'm using Gajeski's rankings, but these are probably a week old. This is the last time I've actually updated these. So maybe some of the player rankings will be a little bit off from where he has them now, but we'll see. All right, we got the 101.
Ooh, here we go.
I'm not going to give you any say in this, Jake. We are taking my guy Justin Jefferson with the 101.
That's right. You're a big time Minnesota guy,
I
right?
am.
So
I am. I'm a huge J Jets fan.
I'm
No,
I'm
I
assuming.
will ask your opinion. Are you okay with that? Is there somebody that you really love with the 101 that you prefer?
So, I mean, I line up with, I think the fantasy points staff is pretty lockstep in this. All of the wide receivers are like the same guy, especially if you could guarantee that, quarterback health, like Tua and Stafford health is a bit of a question for those top guys. But you could make a really good argument for any of the top four wide receivers as the number one pick. I
Okay.
also think there's a somewhat compelling argument for Kelsey as the number one pick, but obviously you're just never going to land on that because you do want exposure to guys like Jefferson or Chase.
Right. You just
When I
don't need
land
to.
1.01, I'm taking Jefferson every time because he's never falling to pick two. I mean, for the most part, occasionally
Exactly.
one out of every 15 drafts, you'll see Chase go first. But yeah, I think you need some exposure there. I don't want any less than 7-8% Justin Jefferson. So yeah, totally good with that.
Okay. Perfect. Well, then we're taking Jefferson, taking my guy 101. This is, I think, in each of these drafts, I gotta have maybe I just gotta go only fantasy points guys on, because then we've got the 101 or 102 in all of our drafts. Maybe I'm wrong, because I think it was I'm misremembering Jacob Sanderson. We had the 102, so maybe I didn't with Chris. I don't remember exactly what the draft orders were, but certainly have had some good luck with the 101 and the 102 lately.
Where's your
And the 101,
favorite spot to pick from in the first round?
the 101. Yeah,
Oh,
it's
okay. Just like in Jefferson and being done. I'm pretty good with that, but honestly, I found like my favorite right around like seventh or eighth, because typically one of those top guys will fall. Like if you can land on Kelsey or Tyreek or Cooper Cup there, like
yeah.
just perfect.
Yeah, I get that. So part of it for me is I like drafting at the turn. So it's like if I can get
Yeah.
the 101 and also get the 2-3 turn, the turns throughout the draft, that is my preference in general, just being able to make two picks at once. So I think that is part of it. And I don't really love the 1-2 turn, the 12 and 13 picks. Like it's just,
Yeah.
I don't know. You never really get two players falling that you really love. Like you never see Cup come down to the 1-2 turn. So
Yeah.
I don't know. And maybe it's just my Vikings bias too. Just I like having J Jets.
No, I think that's fair. I mean, it does feel like relative to previous seasons, the 1.01 isn't worth as much as it was before. I mean, the last few years you were looking at like, oh, McCaffrey is worth so much more than
Right.
the guy you're getting in seventh. Whereas, this year it's so flat at the top at wide receiver that, 1.03 and 1.01 are just kind of the same.
True. Yeah. I mean, so for me the tier has been more like Jefferson and Chase as a clear 1 and 2, and then it's a little
Yeah.
bit of a drop off for me to cut McCaffrey and Tyreek Hill is kind of
Mhm.
the next tier in my opinion. But
Is that because you're worried about quarterback health, or you just don't see as big of a season in those guys?
yeah, it's mostly quarterback health. I mean,
Okay.
it's probably partially just because of what the field is doing. Like because I want to get my exposure to Jefferson and Chase, and you basically never see them fall. I guess Chase are starting to because of the Burrow injury, but for
That's
most
just
of the draft,
ridiculous.
yeah,
Burrow's falling too. Like I've seen Burrow fall to like pick 60, pick 65. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, people are really, really getting riled up for absolutely no reason. So one thing for Tyreek Hill that I think is a little underrated is that the Miami's backup went from Skylar Thompson, who was like a check down king, to Mike White, who can really sling it.
true. That is a
So
good
I
point.
do think that's like another sort of notch in for Tyreek Hill is that
Yeah,
if Tua goes down, they're going to still have a downfield aggressive passing attack that we obviously
that is,
didn't see last season.
that is a very good point regarding Hill. I mean, there's still issues like related to, I mean, potential legal issues with Hill, which I'm not
Yeah,
that concerned about. But then like camp reports are like he doesn't really look like himself, doesn't look that great out there. I mean, that's just like a rumor that I've heard this week, is that he's not looking as dominant as he used to. So probably
yeah,
shouldn't read too much into that.
it does feel like the kind of thing that's definitely overblown. At the same time, though, I mean, Hill is what 29, 30. If he loses a step,
I
then
know he's
yeah,
so
like he's
reliant on his athleticism.
yeah, exactly. Like that would be a pretty major concern. So, I do see it. I think that's been slightly reflected in ADP. Like he's dipped, a tenth, 2/10 of a spot. I'm not, too concerned about it, but certainly something to keep an eye on. Yeah, I'm not getting like crazy aggressive with Hill exposure, but I think I'll probably end up around like 10, 11%. To me, for best ball, I mean, you want the guy who can score 60 points in a week, and Tyreek Hill is that
True.
guy. And if you do think Hill's could lose a step, I mean, that just makes Waddle even more
Good
appealing, right?
point.
Like, what
Yeah.
if Waddle's their wide receiver one this year? Not something I'm leaning into, but
No.
I did notice I was pretty low on Waddle, so I've been trying to bump that exposure up.
He's been creeping up draft boards. Like we just see him go
Yeah.
16th here. I think earlier in the year you get him kind of late in the second round. Now he's kind of a middle, early second round kind of pick, which don't love to see that, because I wish I had taken more Waddle early on. He's always like he's projected well for us. Like he's ranked pretty highly for us, but just I struggle with taking a wide receiver 2 so early for a team.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's definitely tough. He does feel like overvalued in a vacuum, but when you entertain some of the upside arguments, I mean, it's easy to see. If Tyreek Hill loses a step, could Waddle push for like a 1,700-yard season? I mean,
Right.
maybe, right? Like it's certainly possible, especially if Tua can stay healthy all year and this offense is really cranking.
Yeah, and PPR as well. He adds a lot of PPR value.
Yeah.
All right, so we talked about the Cincinnati, being able to get them a little bit later with the dip. I haven't been able to take advantage of that at all so far. Like I partially because I'm stacking, so I'm like, I'm not going to take Joe Burrow, 5 picks past ADP if I don't already have either Higgins or Chase. So that's the downside of having the 101 is, do we really want to take Higgins here at the turn? We could think about, okay, he went already. All right, so we are up.
This is tough.
What are our options here? We don't have Devontae Adams. So we clearly have Josh Jacobs ranked higher than the field. I don't think we need to go there. I'd be happy taking Ramondre.
Yeah, Ramondre's fine. I think if we're going receiver, Debo would be my clear preference there. I'm not sure how you feel about him. Probably want to make Ramondre our first pick.
Yep. So I've just we're getting Ramondre. Debo, Matt really likes. So Debo is Matt's top ranked receiver here. So I'm happy to go to Debo.
Yeah, I mean, I like Debo a lot too. He's
unless you want to go to one of these elite quarterbacks, would be the only other thing I would consider.
I think I'd rather wait. I mean, there's a ton of late round quarterback value, and in a Jefferson build, look for Cousins. Yeah, I think I'd like to go Debo here.
Yeah, and then we can take Purdy pretty late too, generally.
Yeah. Oh man, Purdy is like ridiculously undervalued. Purdy and Tannehill are two of the most like mispriced quarterbacks I've ever seen. It's pretty ridiculous the value you can get at QB. It makes it really hard for me to go with those, like some of those stud quarterbacks, or to go like 2 top 12 guys. I'm not sure about you.
So I've struggled with the Tannehill thing because for most of the offseason, I've thought that Levis was probably going to take like at least some of the games he's going to start. And more like now after they picked up DeAndre Hopkins, they're probably just going to start Tannehill all year, but it's been a hard situation for me to read. I wasn't confident that Tannehill was the starting quarterback, so I had not been drafting him. I've started drafting him more recently since they got DeAndre Hopkins, partially because like he's going to be better with DeAndre Hopkins there, and partially because I think it's a little bit more likely now that he plays the entire year, like starts the entire year. They probably at least let him start longer if they're still in the playoff hunt. So I've started drafting some Tannehill. And I guess same thing with Purdy. So I think that they both had similar concerns. Like Purdy was like, well, for a while we didn't know for sure. Is he going to be healthy for week 1?
Yeah.
Is he going to regain that starting role when he is healthy? And now it's become clear that like, yes, they do plan on starting him whenever he is healthy, and it seems like he's going to be healthy week 1.
Yeah, and I mean, Purdy was one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the league last year. I believe he was 6th in fantasy points per dropback. If you take his starts, including playoffs, he ended up as like QB 8, something like that. So, I mean, yeah, just a ridiculous value. I know some people I've seen on Twitter like, oh, you can't bank on that kind of efficiency. I mean, we saw Nick Mullins be pretty efficient in this offense. Like, I think you can bank on, close to league leading efficiency. The only guys who were close to Purdy in fantasy points per dropback were, the best athletes at quarterback, guys like Justin Fields, Lamar Jackson. I mean, yeah, like typically fantasy points per dropback is just dominated by the rushers. And yeah, Purdy was up there, top 6. So
that's good to know.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Purdy. Honestly, the toughest part is just figuring out which San Francisco guys to pair him with. Ayuk and Kittle, I'm a little down on. I'm ahead of market on Debo, but you can't feel too confident in any of that, given that I think we all expect it to be pretty flat at the top, and I imagine all 3 of those guys will get great spike weeks.
Yeah, exactly. It is hard to know exactly what to do there. So in our rankings, we have Debo well ahead of ADP, and then we have Ayuk well behind ADP. I think Kittle is like right in line with ADP where Matt has him ranked. So I tend to take more Debo, and I haven't got a ton of Ayuk. Although I've started, I also don't want to take enormous stands necessarily on some of these players. Like I don't want to full fade Ayuk because we have him ranked low. So I do
Mhm.
sometimes reach for him anyway. And there's offseason, it's always hard to like know what to make of camp news. I know. I think in your data, Ayuk looks really good. Like he was actually really really good last year, if I'm remembering correctly from a lot of like route running standpoints. Um,
Yeah, no, I think he did do pretty well in a lot of the data stuff. I mean, all these guys just crush in yards after the catch. They get some of the best, touches imaginable for NFL skill position guys. But I believe I forget who had the poll, but someone had like targets per route run when all three of those guys were on the field, and from what I remember, Debo was like head and shoulders above Ayuk and Kittle. Kittle is probably the guy I'm the most worried about because if you look at his splits, almost all of his best games throughout the last 2-3 seasons have come with Debo off the field.
yeah,
So I feel like if you're drafting Kittle, that's a pretty big fade on Debo in a sense.
right. Yeah,
So
so you
like,
probably don't want to pair them up necessarily as much.
yeah, I'd probably stay away from that. I mean, it's so like I'd much rather have a Debo Ayuk combo. But it's really tough with the San Francisco guys.
So we are our turn is coming up, and I would not take Burrow here since we don't have either of Chase or Higgins. But I'm
Yeah.
curious your thought on like what is the earliest? No, yes, what is the earliest you would take Joe Burrow if you don't have Chase or Higgins already?
I'd want to wait. I mean, especially with the way the environment is right now, like he could, I mean, him falling to like, when are we going to pick again? Probably 62, something like that.
72. Yeah,
72. Yeah.
72.
I can't do math. He won't make it that far.
No,
I'd take him, unstacked like 60, 65, somewhere in that range. I think is
I think I
pretty.
had I think I had the choice to take him at like 62 or something like that. And I
Mhm.
didn't in a recent draft, but it was a real struggle for me to think like, man, I like Stack and I don't want to take unstack Burrow and just like throw in, Boyd or Irv Smith or something late.
Yeah.
But it was a tough decision for me at that turn. I'm not taking him like at ADP right now if I don't already have one of the Cincinnati pass catchers, but I think that's like an interesting, just thought exercise of like, where am I willing to take him unstacked where I'm clearly not going to get one of his top two pass catchers.
Yeah, I think early 60s makes a lot of sense, and you can bump that up a little bit if you grab a guy like Kelsey for
Right.
the Week 17 correlation.
All right. So we are back on the clock. We just discussed we're not taking. Let's see. Is DJ Moore available? Oh, we could take DJ Moore and Justin Fields. What do you think of that combo? Or we could.
I'm much more pro Fields than I am Moore. I would be good with that though. I don't have a ton of exposure to that specific stack. It feels to me like Fields is a little underdrafted and Moore is probably overpriced.
Yep. I
Um,
agree.
I,
I
I do think
100%
that's
agree.
okay. I do think that's a pretty fun way to build out a team. I mean, something one of my coworkers, Ryan Heath, has pointed out, and I think other people across the industry, when teams add like a stud wide receiver, pass rate generally increases, and the Bears were at one of the lowest pass rates we've seen
Yep.
in the last decade.
And it
Uh,
would have to increase pretty drastically to for this to work out. Yeah.
yeah.
So I'm absolutely with you. Like I'm much more in on Fields than DJ Moore. However, so I think I tweeted a couple months back. I don't see myself drafting any DJ Moore this year in lineups that don't also have Fields. I've
Mhm.
softened that a little bit. I never take DJ Moore if Fields has already been taken. I will occasionally gamble on taking DJ Moore with the hope that Fields will come back to me when I'm not right on the turn. So I do have
Okay.
a few now that I have DJ Moore and no Fields, and I hate it. Like I feel like if DJ Moore is going to pay off anything close to his current ADP, it means that Justin Fields is going to have a monster season. So I don't
Oh
like
yeah.
having DJ Moore without Justin Fields. But I don't hate the pairing. Like if we get them right where we got them at the 4 or 5 turn, like I kind of like it as a combo. I just don't want to take any uh more without Fields. Man, this guy did not. So he took Burrow he took Chase and Higgins and did not take Burrow.
Oh,
That's
but he's got the correlation with
he
Mahomes
does have the
though.
correlation
So
with Mahomes. Yeah, I
there's
just
that. That's a tough one too. I've definitely ended up with some teams where I grab Chase Higgins and I'm hoping to get Burrow, and then he doesn't land there. I
that's the
always,
worst. Yeah,
yeah, I know. I always wonder like how bad how bad is my expected value? Like how big of a swing is that? I mean, I imagine it's significant, but very difficult to measure. So one of the things that I've noticed, like your point on Justin Fields kind of reminded me, he's a guy that you just really don't see fall, especially compared to like Burrow. Trevor Lawrence is another one who you just see fall really
Yeah,
far in
right.
certain rooms. And I think I mean, this is probably going to inspire someone to write a really cool article, but the data point that would be incredibly helpful for best ball is just getting like standard deviations for like drafts, like how far guys are falling.
Right. Oh,
That
that
would
would be
be,
really interesting. Yeah,
yeah,
you're
that would be
totally right.
massive, and that would make for like such a great research piece. But you can only look back in time. I mean, I guess if if you like a group of people aggregated all their drafts, maybe they could get to something like kind of close to market, but
Yeah.
sample size is going to be, a bit of an issue there unless you have a couple thousand drafts at least.
Yep.
But yeah, that's just something where like drafting a ton really helps you kind of figure out like, oh, I can wait on this guy, decent chance he'll make it back to me,
Yep.
or the opposite. So
that's a really, really interesting. Yeah, that would be really interesting research. I mean, yeah, I draft a ton, so like I have an idea of which players might fall back to me and which players are definitely not going to. But it would be interesting to like get the actual data.
yeah, for sure. That would be awesome. So where are you landing with exposures? Like on the high end? Like how many drafts have you done? And yeah, where are you landing on your highest exposures? Is it shifting with position at all? Well, I'm curious where you're at.
Yeah, so let me look. I'm going to pull it up on my phone because I don't want to. I don't want to like leave this screen while we're doing
Yeah.
the draft. But I'm pretty flat in general. Like I don't take huge stands on
Hmm.
players. Usually I don't have more than like 30% of anybody by the end of the season. I've drafted a ton already. So let's see in the main contest here. So like Best Ball Mania
Hmm.
4 and the Poodle and all these like standard regular season contests. Let's see, I've done 53, 63, 73, 92, 107, 119, 152, 166. I've done 167 total drafts so far. My highest exposed players are all wide receivers. So I've got
Oh,
35% Rondell Moore, 33% DJ Chark, 28% Hunter Renfro, 23% Donovan Peoples-Jones, 22% Mecole Hardman, 20% KJ. I'm trying to read it. Okay. 20% KJ Osborne, 19% Cortland Sutton. And then finally I get to some non-receivers with 18% each of Darren Waller and Lamar Jackson. So I have more than 30% of two players right now, Rondell Moore and DJ Chark. Otherwise, I'm fairly spread out. How about you? What's your kind of exposure looking like?
yeah, I'm at a pretty similar range. I've done about 200 drafts across both major platforms. Most of my action has been on DK. But yeah, I'm in a similar zone. I don't have anyone above 30% right now. Anthony Richardson is at 29% for me, but then after that, quarterback falls off significantly. All my other quarterbacks are 15% and lower. Yeah, running back, I've got Jerome Ford 27%. Everyone else is below 20. Wide receiver, I've got a lot of guys. Like it's almost all late round guys. Shakir, Justin Ross, Devontae Parker,
Justin Ross.
Palmer.
You're another Justin Ross believer.
I mean, look, man, Scott Barrett is the best football writer alive, and he really likes Justin Ross, and he's also my boss and a good friend. And I kind of feel like I owe it to him to get some
He's
Justin
talked
Ross
me into Justin
exposure.
Ross too. I mean,
Plus,
he's
I
very
mean,
convincing.
there, one of the beats tweeted out today is 53-man roster projection said Ross is gonna make the roster. He thinks so.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think Ross could play and like be a legitimate contributor. Realistically, though, like he's probably perma capped at like 30% of snaps this year, given the
Right.
health concerns. I mean, he's had like a dozen doctors say you could die if you're tackled wrong.
Oh,
So I
seriously?
imagine,
Wow. I
oh
did not
yeah,
realize
like he's
that.
going to be the first NFL. I forget what the medical term is called, but he's going to be the first player in professional football history to play with like a congenital spine fusion.
Okay,
I,
we are
I, I
coming up
might be
next.
off on the medical,
I
but
do want to continue this conversation, but we're coming up next. We've seen some. Oh man, Kittle just went. Okay, we just have some weird picks here with Tua going 69 overall. All right, so
wow.
we have three wide receivers with Fields and Ramondre. We could
Definitely like
go.
a running back. Sanders is pretty nice.
Yeah, I don't hate Miles Sanders here. Kind of fell. I was hoping to get Kittle, even though we talked about the negative correlation with Kittle
Yeah.
and Debo. Still, if we can
Yeah,
get
it would have made
Kittle falling.
Purdy pretty nice. Um
So I don't hate taking Sanders here, and then we could take a second running back. So now we have, and I'm a big bye week guy, in case you didn't know. So we got a bye week 11 and 7 at running back. We could add in a J.K. Dobbins
We could
stay in line.
go
Or we could go another wide
Addison
receiver.
and we could go Addison and grab or no, that's the week 13 bye, so we probably shouldn't go Cousins.
Yeah.
Match with Fields. Cooks or Evans? Yeah, I don't really have a strong presence. All right.
Yeah, I think Evans there just because Cooks, like, we're taking him way ahead of ADP there, whereas Evans, I also have a lot of Cooks, so I think I like spreading out the exposure a little bit.
I've been grabbing a good amount of Cooks too. He's just, solid value veteran. Like, feels like a nice depth piece to pretty much any best ball team. I was grabbing a ton of Tony, but the medical on him
I know
it's been so terrible. I mean, the way they were talking about him, and I genuinely think they believe this, was like, oh, he's our Tyreek Hill. And I mean, people say like you can't run routes downfield, this and that. Like, you look at the 2 games that he had as a Giant where he really exploded. He was playing 70% on the outside, and he was getting depth on his routes. Like, he can run routes, he can get open, he's a good player. He just has like ligaments made out of baby food. The guy can't stay healthy. And fantasy points, we have Dr. Edwin Porras who works for us, helps us a ton on the medical side of things. He said it's basically a mortal lock that Tony's going to need another surgery.
Oh, really?
At some point this, probably within the next 12 months, he said, very, very likely. And that he's, essentially a ticking time bomb. So
both medically and just like off the field.
Yeah, right. Yeah, he might be. I mean, you've seen, if you've been on NFL Twitter, he's been DMing some people some colorful stuff.
I saw that.
Where would you take Tony? Obviously he's falling a lot in drafts. ADP's around 95, I think, probably still falling.
Oh, is it really that low now?
Or I might be thinking of DK. He could be a little higher on Underdog. But yeah, where would you feel comfortable? Okay, yeah.
I mean, it depends. So if I have Mahomes or if I have a Burrow stack, maybe I'd take him just a little bit past this, like probably around pick 90. And if I don't, I'm probably waiting until closer to pick 100 before I consider it. Really also depends on, like, he goes in a range where there are sometimes players that I clue like better than him. Sometimes, so if he falls down to the range of like Cortland Sutton, then I might consider him. Like, then it's like, okay, maybe I'll take him here. So it kind of depends on who's available for me.
Yeah, no, I'm with you too. After Michael Thomas is off the board and like that range of wide receivers, things really start to fall off. I like JMO a lot, but I'm also a little. I mean, the stuff out of camp on him hasn't been great so far. So yeah, no, that's about when I would take Tony too. After Michael Thomas is off the board, right around pick 100 is where I feel comfortable. I mean, I still think he could get us some really good spike weeks, but I mean, man, he's probably going to play 10 or 12 games, and that makes it really tough when you factor in, some of those games will probably be limited. Yeah, it's just gross.
So you're a big Jameson Williams guy. Interesting. So he's a player that I'm like, I can't draft unless I'm trying to set up that stack or something. I can't click it. I know he's going to be back for the playoffs. Like, he is back for the most important part of the year for best ball, but it's still just like, it's tough for me to click knowing that he's going to miss those 6 weeks. And now with the camp reports of him just like dealing with drops and stuff, it's a tough click for me.
Yeah, it seems like his attitude may not be the best. I'm not sure how much that matters, if
I was getting in a
at
fight
all
yesterday in practice.
Yeah. I mean, and sometimes coaches are like, "Oh yeah, we love to see guys getting fights." Shows they got that dog in them or whatever. But I mean, my stance is that like him missing the first 6 weeks of the season, like the fact that we know he's going to be back for the weeks leading up to the playoffs and of course the best ball playoffs. I'm leaning towards the suspension basically doesn't like matter at all. He's going to be your, wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5. Like, it's really not going to impact your team's playoff chances drastically. And ideally in the ceiling outcome, he has like a really great downfield role, which, should lend itself to, ideally a lot of 20+ point games. I mean, he played like 12 snaps last year and caught a couple deep touchdowns. So the ability is clearly there. It's, but I understand being a little hesitant to take him. I mean, you could just argue they'll prefer a guy like Marvin Jones and just go with that.
Yeah. I mean, So, man, this is kind of a weird room where the quarterbacks are ones. We had Tua went 69 overall. We just had Daniel Jones go 91 and Anthony Richardson 89 overall. So we're not really getting any value quarterbacks fall into us. These are the two that I draft pretty frequently when they fall past pick 100. But we already have a week 13 bye at quarterback anyway, so didn't want Daniel Jones, but
Those are the two guys that I'm taking. Like I feel like I end almost every draft with one of them. Those are my two highest owned quarterbacks. I'm
Yeah.
huge fan of
So
both guys.
so I said I love the 101, but this turn in particular is such a tough one. The
Yeah.
96, 97. It's like, man, who do we want here? I'd be happy taking Michael Thomas here. Do we have any other correlations we need to set up? Not really that I can see. Oh, Michael Thomas went. So Rashad Bateman here is pretty clearly a
Bateman's
tier
fine.
above.
Bateman's a guy who medical stuff I think has been pretty overblown. You know, Edwin Boris already mentioned him. He says like, yeah, definitely draft Bateman. Like you're good to go.
I'm very much in on Bateman, but then
Mhm.
after Bateman, so we don't have a tight end yet. Do you care? Do you want to take a Njoku or Evan
I
Ingram, or we
I
could go
don't
like
love this range for tight end. I would prefer to wait. I mean, I love like Dulcich and even some of the guys after him. I think are pretty strong values. This
who,
is a build where we're
who do
probably
you
looking at
like
three tight ends.
in this
Dalvin
build?
Cook would probably be my preference
I have
here.
very, very little Delvin Cook, so I'm
I
happy
think people,
to add him to the
and
portfolio.
understandably, people are really scared of the uncertainty here. But I think regardless of where he signs, if it Tampa Bay, Miami, New York, it almost doesn't matter. His ADP is gonna increase. Like you're gonna get closing line value on Dalvin Cook at an ADP of 93.
You think
Um,
even if it goes to like the Jets, where he's clearly behind Brees Hall, you think he would be?
I
I think
guess
you're probably right, actually. But
New York is a little tougher, but at the same time, I mean, would you be shocked if Brees Hall like just wasn't himself this year coming off of the injury? Like maybe
yeah,
it is a
no,
1A 1B type thing, and it could also be the kind of offense that sustains multiple quality running backs. I mean, this could be one of the best offenses in the NFL.
true.
So I definitely get that though. I guess New York. Maybe I was getting a tad ahead of myself, but
No,
I still think
I think you're right. Like
the
I question you, but then I'm like, you probably are right. Like because we see David Montgomery going, earlier than Dalvin Cook, and
yeah.
it's
I
sort
mean
of a
that
similar
is a
like
fair point, and
he's the RB2.
just the certainty. I mean, people will just be able to take him with a little more confidence. So maybe, I mean,
It's
you get
bye
way
week
better.
bros. It's bye week bros like myself. It's like he doesn't have bye week. I'm not taking a guy with no bye week. I can't risk it. Two running
Yeah.
backs with the same bye week.
Oh
No.
my goodness. Yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, I think you probably get some closing line value on him no matter what. So,
Yeah.
I've been taking him more and more as we've seen him fall. I mean, I can't see him going any lower. So yeah,
Right.
I'm fine with it. And it seems like he's still got some gas in the tank. I mean, I know, I think it was Brett Whitefield, one of our film guys and one of our charters, who said that since his shoulder injury, he's played a little softer. I mean, you're a Vikings fan, Neil, so I'm not sure what like your observation is here, but yeah, he said he's been like a little more hesitant to seek out contact.
Yeah, I think that's
since the shoulder stuff.
I think that is accurate. So I didn't really notice it last year, but he didn't seem like he was fully himself last year. So
Yeah.
that probably is correct. He still had some really nice runs.
Oh yeah,
Last
no, I
year.
mean he still looks good. When you think of the free agent running backs, he's clearly the head and shoulders above the rest in
Absolutely.
terms of ability.
Yeah, Kareem Hunt I think is washed.
Oh yeah,
Lenny is just I don't think Lenny's ever been on the same level as a Delvin Cook.
yeah,
Zeke is clearly washed. So yeah,
yeah.
I think I'm with you that he's clearly the number one of the free agent running backs.
Where do you land on like Lenny and Zeke too? Because they're sort of like discount Dalvin Cook in these drafts right now.
I have not taken a ton of Zeke in particular.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually taken a good amount of Lenny, just because I think he's a little bit more talented. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but it feels to me like I think he's a little bit better than Zeke at this point in their careers.
He's got more of a reputation as a pass catcher too, which I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Like I don't think he's like some great route runner or anything like that. Brady just checked down.
I know. I think it probably
much.
that's the thing. Like I think of him as being a better pass catcher, but it probably is just the Brady effect.
Yeah, right. But I mean, who knows? Maybe there are coaches out there who are like, oh, he had 80 targets last year or whatever. Let's give him some more targets. I mean, you're never quite sure how the coaching staffs end up looking at this.
So are you one of the guys who has the week 17 memorized? Can you tell me who the Bears are playing in week 17?
No, I'm not there. Chris Wecht, one of my coworkers.
I know. Chris was
he's,
on
he's like so on it with the week 17 schedule. I have like maybe 4 or 5 games memorized, but I do still find myself Googling it when I need some emergency correlation.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I don't have the schedule memorized. I know like the Vikings play the Packers. I know the Chiefs play the Bengals. I know several, but I definitely don't have the whole thing memorized. Which maybe a good way. Oh, they're playing the Falcons in week 17, so one more bonus for the Bears actually. But I don't know that it really helps us with making decisions.
That
So
could
there's no
be
Falcons players.
the worst pace game in the history of the NFL, right? I mean, you could see 30 pass attempts in that contest.
I suppose. Yeah. See, to me, I look at them like those are two bad defenses, so it's going to be great. But you're right, the pace could be bad.
Yeah, that's the DFS player in you.
Yeah. So Khalil Herbert, he's somebody I guess we could have added as like a kind of stacking partner with Fields, but he went. All right, so we are coming up. We have the next pick, 120 and 121. We don't have any great fallers here. Nobody who's like a great value that fell to us, unfortunately.
How's tight end looking? This is kind of where I start.
So we could take Dalton Schultz if we wanted.
I think I have a slight preference toward Higbee.
We can probably wait for Higbee though.
Okay, yeah.
How do you feel about any of these wide receivers? Juju, Jacoby, Zay.
I think half PPR makes it tough. Full PPR, I would prefer Jacoby. I think Zay Jones would probably be my favorite.
How do you feel about Damian Harris?
I don't really have much interest in.
All right,
in
we're not doing Damian Harris then.
No, I don't think so. Elijah Mitchell is like the premium handcuff. He smashes it.
How do you feel about doing that as our fourth?
Okay. Ooh, I like that. And then we can go for.
We're already pretty strong at wide receiver.
Purdy. Yeah, and Purdy wouldn't interfere with our bye. Yeah, let's go Mitchell and then get a nice San Francisco stack. I love that. Yeah, so I think like when you're drafting some of these backups, it's important to, think through sort of how they get there. I don't see it for Damian Harris. Like if James Cook gets hurt, Latavius Murray all of a sudden is probably getting the bulk of the carries. And, Damian Harris is obviously going to have good touchdown equity because he's built like a tank, but Josh Allen also has great touchdown equity and he's also built like a tank. I mean, it's just not like, I really don't see it for a guy like Harris, whereas Elijah Mitchell, I mean, standalone value, like he can probably get you 8 fantasy points per game when McCaffrey's healthy. And if McCaffrey gets hurt, I mean, you're looking at 2021 Elijah Mitchell, if I remember correctly, who averaged 15.5 fantasy points per game.
He's, I mean, great.
Like
I
low end
love
RB1.
the contingent value of Elijah Mitchell. I think Chris said the same thing. So I think you got a lot of groupthink going on fantasy points, don't you?
We chat a lot.
Players,
no,
he also was in on Latavius Murray, is what I was saying.
It does, like, genuinely, I think it helps us all a lot to be a part of a team where I go into all these conversations and I'm like, I'm the dumbest guy in the room. Like, I'm just here to absorb. I'm here to absorb knowledge. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Like it's such a good learning environment. So, I feel like we end up pretty in sync with a lot of our takes because we chat so much. And, I think trust each other. If, one guy's got a lot of conviction, then, for the most part, his coworkers are pretty willing to get on board.
Right.
So
it's a sharp group of guys, good group of guys to be a part of.
For sure.
If you're going to be group thinking, you want to be in the right group.
Yes, exactly. Don't want to get caught group thinking with a bunch of dummies.
So I think Chris and I. So in my draft with Chris, I believe we were trying to take Latavius Murray with our 18th round pick, and I starred him. So like I never do this. I let the clock run down, and I had him in my queue. What I didn't realize is I have positional limit set up. And I didn't know. I thought that only applied like if you're not in the draft, it will auto draft.
Yeah, like auto draft had to be.
I didn't realize that while I was in there because I let the clock run down. It auto drafted, so we got Brandon Cooks or something instead of Latavius Murray, which wasn't the end of the world. He was probably the best value at that point, but it was kind of funny that he talked me into Latavius Murray. I was like, all right, we're gonna do it, and then it was like, wait, Brandon Cooks, how did that happen?
I mean, Murray probably has better contingent value than Damian Harris, like just straight up. I mean, if James Cook stays healthy all year, Damian Harris almost certainly averages more fantasy points per game. But I mean, Latavius Murray had like 3 games over 20 fantasy points last year. Like you look at his game log from last season and it's like, where did this guy come from? Like, well, what is this about? But he's still he he's a grinder. He can get some touches.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So we coming back towards us now. We still have several picks before our turn. What do you think? Like, okay, so we're going to be 144. We could probably risk waiting one more turn for Brock Purdy. What do you think? Do we take him early or?
What's the quarterback landscape looking like? Oh, that's pretty brutal. I'd honestly rather just take him now. I think this is like a very appropriate point to take Purdy in drafts.
Right.
I would be pretty surprised if he didn't, like, if come September 1st, he wasn't going 10 to 15 spots higher.
Okay.
So I'm fine. Like I'm fine reaching on a guy where we have the stack, and I'm very confident there's going to be some strong closing line value there.
Yep.
Um,
Oh,
so
Darnell Mooney might fall. Like I normally don't draft a ton of. Okay, he just went. I was just gonna say if he
I'm
falls
just
to us here, I might be willing to take him since we have Fields.
multiple Bears is tough.
I
Like
know,
that's a
but we
really
have
tough
Fields, so
sell.
like this is the one place that I might be willing to take because we're betting
Yeah,
on Fields, taking a step forward. Obviously, want his pass catchers. I do think that we could consider taking a tight end here, right? Because
I
we don't
like
have any yet.
Higby the most out of those guys. I
Okay,
could be convinced on Schultz, um,
let's line it up: Higbee, Schultz,
and then
Chig,
Chig. Yeah. Where do you fall on Chig? Like, how are you looking
not
at these
high.
Tennessee guys after You think Hopkins just kills like Burks and Chig?
I feel so to me, Chig is just going too high anyway. Like he graded out really well, I know, in a lot of stats last year, but it was like a fairly small sample size. He was like a fourth round draft pick. I just don't
Mhm.
totally buy that he's as good. Like I looked at like fantasy points per route runner, certain metrics. He looked very elite. Like he looked like he was right up there with like a Kelsey.
Almost all the efficiency stuff. He was like just killing it. And I mean, I think Scott told me this. Like he was in a 60-40 split with Austin Hooper and averaged, like 50 yards per game in the second half of the season. Like he was really good. And if you assume the role's all his, I definitely see a good upside case there, especially if you think DeAndre Hopkins is washed. And I lean a little bit in that direction. But we know, I mean, even a washed DeAndre Hopkins is still going to earn a lot of targets.
Right.
And the volume side of things is tough.
Yeah.
But yeah, Higby Purdy, I feel
All right.
very good about right
Let's do Purdy Higbee. If Matthew Stafford falls to us at the next turn, we could consider taking Stafford as a third quarterback, or do you just want to sit with just two quarterbacks here?
I'm good with two. I think if we had a slightly less premium quarterback instead of
Yeah.
Fields, I would definitely consider three. But we spent pretty good capital on Fields, so if we need a third quarterback in this build, we're probably screwed anyway.
True.
So yeah, I think I'd rather stick with Fields and Purdy. I mean, that's like
I think I'm
such
probably
a
happy with that
great
too. It really,
quarterback
yeah,
combo. That makes me so happy.
it really is. Like I'm happy. I'm actually really happy with the way this draft is going in general. Like I think Fields and Purdy is a pretty good combo. I think this running back room is shaping up pretty well for a 4 running back start here. I think there's a lot of upside in all 4 of these guys. Wide
Mm.
receiver, obviously we got J Jets number 1. I like Debo as a wide receiver 2. DJ Moore, neither of us love, but we're already making the bet on Field, so I don't hate that. Evans, I feel like we got pretty good value. Bateman, good value. Jones, is a fine wide receiver 6. So
Yeah, I really like having 6 wide receivers at this point in the draft because it gets, I mean, so thin. There's a couple late round guys I like. I mean, obviously, Marvin Mims is, I think, a premium target here if he
oh yeah,
somehow
if he
makes it back to us.
has he gone
Um,
already? No, he hasn't gone already. So he could. He's probably. I
his
mean, he's creeping earlier and earlier, so it's unlikely he makes it back to us. But yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, especially in like a Best Ball Mania 4 on Underdog, like you probably see him go 15 spots ahead of ADP, but I
Right.
haven't like I'm a little surprised that I haven't seen him creep up like as intensely as I thought he would. I thought it would be like an immediate 10 spot jump in ADP.
Right.
And it's been a much slower creep. And this, I mean, this is a guy who like Scott Barrett just absolutely loved, and like Scott's process for pre-draft skill position players is like insane. Like he wrote like 32,000 words on all the running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. That's like a third of the catcher in the rye.
Yeah.
Like,
Scott is kind of a madman. He just did a tweet
oh
thread about running backs and how none of them are good this year. I was like, man, this is
yeah,
like intense.
yeah, no, he's pretty insane with the amount of work that he puts in, and I mean, he just absolutely loved Marvin Mims, and I know a lot of the film guys did too. So Mims is a guy that I've ended up really high on, and I was a little anxious about it a few weeks ago because I was thinking like, oh, the news about Tim Patrick has been really good. I'm
I
not sure
know.
how much playing time he's really going to get, and man, I mean, I had a lot of Patrick too. You just really got to feel for the guy. That's
Yeah.
back
Really.
to back training camp injuries. That's as bad as it gets. Like
I
that's
know.
terrible.
And he
Um,
seems like he's a talented guy, but we're just never gonna see it. Like it's like
At the
I've been
very
drafting
least,
him.
he already got paid. I mean, he already got like a pretty sizable contract from Denver. I think like
Okay.
25 mil guaranteed or something like that.
All
So
right. Good for him. Good for
he's
him.
got that, and I think Sean Payton said today that it was a very clean Achilles tear for what it's worth. So the
Yeah.
chance of a full recovery is very very high. But yeah, I mean that stuff is just so brutal.
Yeah. Always hate to see injuries like that.
Yep.
All right. Van Jefferson went. What are we looking at for this next turn?
Who do you like as like a late round tight end option? Because I think there's a lot of guys you can make an argument for, but
Yep.
okay. So in this build, I'd lean towards 3 tight ends unless we found a guy that we really liked. And
I'm with you. Since we got Tyler Higbee as our first tight end, like we're taking some late round guys. So
the
I've drafted a ton of Hayden Hurst.
okay,
I've drafted a ton of these top two, Dawson Knox, just because Knox falls so late relative to where we have him ranked. I end up like, all right, if you're going to give me Dawson Knox at, pick 180, I'll take Dawson Knox all day. I do like Hurst. We could, I mean, if Komet falls to us, I would want to take Komet just because we'd be getting value on one of our stacks.
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree with that? Like, if we can get him at 168 and he has an ADP of 150.
I'd be okay with that. Yeah, I'd be good with Komet there. Generally, I've been stacking these. I've been grabbing these guys who go significantly later. Like, I think the next few rounds is tough. I like Juwan Johnson and Taysom. I think both have pretty good merit. Taysom, especially in terms of like spike weeks. I mean,
yeah,
he can have like a multi-rushing touchdown game. He could just start a game at quarterback.
I know it's
it's ridiculous. We need to figure out a way to deal with this man.
That just went too. Yeah, I drafted a ton of Taysom last year, like thinking like, well, what if he starts at games at quarterback? Like he's going to be so amazing, and then he didn't, and he was still pretty great. Like for a last round pick, he's crept up so high in ADP this year that I haven't been drafting him nearly as much as last year.
Yeah, I'd say he's appropriately priced. So I'm taking him when he lands, but definitely certainly not a guy you reach for. I really like the late round options, Likely, Jake Ferguson, and Hunter Henry. Isaiah Likely is I'm not sure how many handcuff tight ends have truly existed over the last 10 or 20 years. Right. Isaiah Likely is the clearest handcuff tight end. I mean, I think he's really good. And if Andrews gets hurt, he's a top 5 player at the position. It's such a great contingency pick. And he probably gets you some standalone.
I think he does have some standalone value.
Yeah, he could have a multi-TD week. I mean, we know health could be an issue for some of these receivers with Odell and Rashad Bateman. So I really like Likely. But yeah, totally good with Taysom Hill.
Yeah, I mean, if he falls to us this late, I guess it's only 10 picks past ADP, so not okay. So he went. All right.
I have almost 0 Dawson Knox. I wouldn't hate some exposure here. It's not that I dislike him. I just feel like there are better options.
Do you think we need another running back or? All right, who's your preference from this group? So we've got Juwan Johnson and Dawson Knox would be reaching a little bit, or we could just go to other positions too.
So I think Deontay Foreman would probably be my favorite pick.
I was thinking Foreman looks good, and also we don't have any Week 13 buys yet, so don't hate that.
Yeah, and plus it's a little mini stack with Fields. Efficiency should be amazing for these running backs. I mean, it's probably some sort of weird committee. But they should be really efficient, kind of like the Eagles backfield of last year, where maybe you get some spike weeks out of Herbert or Foreman.
So we got Foreman. Do we want to take another tight end? We could go Donovan Peoples-Jones.
I feel like we should go tight end, unless you have a strong preference on one of these receivers. Okay,
you have a tight end you like better.
Hayden Hurst or Juwan Johnson, I feel like are roughly equal value to me.
Let's probably go Juwan Johnson because we might be able to get Hurst in the next round.
Okay, yeah, I'm good with that. Okay. Where do you fall on the Dalton Kincaid hype? I'm assuming you're way down on him and high on Knox, or
I would say that I'm way down on Dalton Kincaid. I don't take him at ADP unless I am already have Josh Allen. Generally, I guess I would say so. I'll take him if he falls a few picks past ADP. I don't really have a strong read on the situation. I guess I'm a little bit low on him relative to ADP. I'm not taking him ahead of ADP unless I have the stack. But I'm not super down on him. I guess I just don't really know what to make of him. It's a tough he's going to be playing the slot and he's a rookie tight end. I don't know. It's a hard read for me. How do you feel about it?
No, I agree. It's certainly a difficult situation. The history of production for rookie tight ends is pretty abysmal. I mean, Kyle Pitts is the greatest tight end prospect of all time, and he averaged 10 fantasy points per game in his rookie season. That's just not going to get you there with Kincaid. I mean, it certainly would present value relative to where he's being drafted, but not by much. Really wouldn't make a huge difference for best ball teams. So yeah, I'm kind of leaning on teams where I draft Josh Allen. I'm fine taking Kincaid at cost, but as a non-stack pick, I think he's pretty bad. Like without the stack, I probably wouldn't consider taking him until like pick 145, something like that, like right around Tyler Higbee.
So we're pretty similar.
Okay, yeah. So I think that's probably where I've seen a lot of sharps land. I know Liam Murphy is all about every Bills player, and he's been really hyping up Kincaid. But outside of him, I feel like most people kind of agree. Yeah, overvalued. Fine in Allen stacks.
I mean, I think Liam might have a little bit of bias there.
Yeah, I mean, it's worked out for him. You know,
it has.
You just print money drafting Bills. It's like, why are we not all doing this? It's kind of like how every year in the Millionaire Maker, like Bears fan 420 wins just from like a six team pack that looks like it should never work, and then they score 50 points, and there you have it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, he's definitely made out with those Bills picks, but the price is just not the same as it was the year when Liam won.
No, not at all. I do actually really like a lot of the late round Bills receivers. Late round receiver is really thin right now. I think way more. I mean, it's obviously very, very receiver heavy in all drafts, especially Underdog. And yeah, late round receiver is a total disaster. But one guy that I found myself taking a lot, not as much on Underdog, but more so on DK, where it's 20 round drafts. Deontay Hardy is like a really great pick, I think, just because he's a burner, like really, really fast player. He got $5 million guaranteed. It was a $10 million 2-year contract with $5 million guaranteed.
I'm spelling it wrong. How do you spell Deontay Hardy?
I think it's Hardy. It might be TY. Yeah.
Okay, there he is. Okay. So I think I have 0 shares of Deontay Hardy.
I like I said, much better pick on DraftKings where it's 20 round drafts. I don't think you necessarily have to get there on Underdog. Like I'd rather have a guy like Corey Davis or Greg Dortch on Underdog.
So I'm not missing much by not taking.
No, I don't think so. I do think he's certainly worth exposure in Bill stacks. I mean, at the very least, like I think it's pretty likely he catches a few long touchdowns, and if a guy like Khalil Shakir or Gabe Davis goes down, like he could push for like a 60% route share.
Sure.
So I'd much rather have him than like who's the rookie they drafted, Jawan Shorter or something like that. I'd much rather
him either.
Much rather have Hardy than Shorter.
All right, so we are up with the next pick. Do you want to take? So Hayden Hurst looks like he's probably going to fall to us here if we want him.
Okay, I could definitely be convinced on Hurst.
And then maybe I feel good about our running backs. I don't think we need another one, but if you want to take one more running back, I'd be okay with it.
Can we see running back? How's that looking?
Travion Williams just went down today with an injury. So Chase Brown gets a little bit of extra value there. Kevin Harris has gotten. Evan Hall is somebody that I've drafted a little bit of.
Pretty interesting. Deion Jackson and Zach Moss are also kind of interesting. It's tough to know like how things are going to shake out with what was it? Zach Moss like breaking his arm and obviously the Jonathan Taylor holdout.
So I have been drafting a good amount of Evan Hall, so I'd be fine going there as well. So we're at 2, 5, 6. So I want at least one more wide receiver.
Yeah, let's see.
So we could take
Corey Davis, Shakir, both fine. Devontae Parker, pretty nice.
Oh, is he still available?
Yeah. Let's go Parker, and then we can wait on Hole.
Okay. We got good. Did you get it in time? I thought I missed it.
This is shaping up to be a pretty good team. I'm pretty happy with all these picks.
I am too. Yeah. So I think we can probably get Hall with our last round pick. Another. So I know Hall is a guy that Derek Brown has been very high on. I know he's the one that I think of when I think of Evan Hall. He was high on him all offseason. He's also really high on another guy that he brought up recently is Xavier Hutchinson. Is he somebody you've been drafting at all for the Texans wide receiver?
No, I'm more interested in Tank Dell. I mean, I know Tank Dell is like super, super tiny, but for what it's worth, like I don't watch a ton of college football, but I do watch every Cincinnati Bearcats game, as you can probably tell from the chair behind me.
Sure.
And our 2021 defense was incredible. I mean, it got us into the college football playoff. Tank Dell like tore us up in the conference championship. He looked really, really good. And I know like the reports out of camp have been decent. It's just like the size with him is such a concern. So I would prefer Tank Dell. But realistically, I mean, if we're getting into like Houston's wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4, we could probably do a little better, I think.
Okay. I've taken oh, Justin Ross just went. So he's the steam is there
Oh,
for Justin Ross.
it's like as soon as like Scott Barrett spent his whole life hyping this guy up, and as soon as there's any positive camp news, everyone else is just like, oh well, Scott's definitely right. He's a future superstar.
I know. It's pretty funny. I'm glad that I got my shares, early because of Scott. So
Me too.
appreciate him for that.
So here's an interesting debate. Like, how do you feel about, say, you draft 200 teams over the course of an offseason? What do you think the split should be in terms of when you are drafting those teams? Because that's something that I've kind of struggled with a little bit too. I did a ton of drafts in May. Feel like I got some good closing line value. Also took a bath on like Michael Pittman.
Sure. Yep.
But yeah, and then I'm obviously saving a lot for like the last weekend in August when hopefully all the sites panic and maybe give out free tickets or all the casuals come in. Yeah, where do you fall? Like most people discuss that sort of barbell approach being more optimal.
Yeah, I don't know that that's actually been found to be true. Somebody posted research about it, and it was like pretty flat. Like there was maybe a little bit of an advantage at certain times. To me, like if I'm drafting, 200 drafts, and obviously both you and I are drafting more than 200 drafts. You got to be drafted throughout the summer, like just for like mental health. Like I don't want to be drafting 200 drafts all in August. I mean, I guess some people are doing that anyway. They're drafting 200 drafts every month, but for me, I like to spread it out. I also think that way you kind of get different, that you naturally get more spread out with your exposures. Like you get some players early on that you're going to have some closing line value on, some other players that you didn't draft early maybe become better values as different news break. So I like drafting throughout the summer just as a way of like spreading out exposure based on the way the ebbs and flows of the draft season. All right. So we could add Chase Claypool to our stack, or we could just add Evan Hall to
I have a slightly controversial take, and it's that I think Tyler Scott is actually going to outproduce Chase Claypool as the
then
Bears
let's
wide
not
receiver
take Chase
3.
Claypool. All right.
Yeah, I think Tyler Scott is just outright more skilled than Chase Claypool. I like Evan Hull here.
Okay.
I could be convinced on Corey Davis.
If it's Evan Hall, we need to actually click it because I think I probably have 5 as my, maybe I have 6 as my positional limit. Let's do it. Let's just do.
I mean, yeah, we have Jefferson. Like this feels like a good team to go 6 RBs, 7 wide receivers. Yeah. I'm good with it. I really love this team, Neil. I think
it was a strong one. Yeah,
I've done a lot of drafts, and this is one of the better ones.
I feel like 2, 6, 7, 3 is not a very common construction for me, but I do think it works for this particular draft. 2 quarterback I do all the time, and I think Fields and Purdy, it's a pretty strong quarterback room. The running back room, I think I usually take 5. I usually take more than 7 wide receivers is really what it comes down to.
Yeah.
But as you said, we've got Justin Jefferson here. We got Deebo Samuel, really strong wide receiver 1 and 2. DJ Moore, and I know both of us are a little bit low on him, but he's, I guess, fine for a wide receiver 3. And then Mike Evans as a wide receiver 4, I think is really strong. So overall, I'm with you. I think this is overall a very strong team. I think every position we're pretty, we've got a good allocation of talent at each position. So how do you grade this one?
I think this is worth like a B+, A-. This is pretty quality work. Obviously not, the perfect draft would have a ton of, values that just fall to us and, optimal game stacks and all that. I mean, but this is pretty dang good overall. I really love 3 tight end builds too. Like if I'm not getting Andrews, Hawkinson, Kelsey, I'm almost always leaning into 3 tight end. I'm not sure if it's published yet, maybe it is, but I know Scott Barrett was rewriting Anatomy of a League Winner, and me and him were talking about how almost all the league winning tight ends or league winning seasons at tight end have come from either Kelsey or a guy drafted after round 12. Oh, wow. So to me, that translated to in best ball, you're either building, a Kelsey like single tight end or Kelsey plus a very, last round tight end type build, or you're just grabbing 3 later round guys and hoping one of them hits.
Sure.
But I'm a huge fan of the build.
Yeah, I think that we took I like the tight ends that we took. I'm curious, like I feel like I want to see if any of these teams look very strange. So there was, where did we get? Okay, so we had Tua at 69 overall. Let's see, this team looks a little bit interesting to me. Yeah, I guess Henry goes a little bit, like none of these are too far off their value. Outside of Tua went a little bit early there. It seemed like there were
quarterbacks though. Like
he did take 3 quarterbacks pretty early.
Guys.
Yeah. So that was interesting build. Probably not one that I would build, but ultimately not like that bad. Like it doesn't look like it could win there. So Yeah, it doesn't look like we had anybody who was tanking in this draft. I think overall, like I don't see any of these teams that look terrible to me. That one obviously not my favorite there with the 3 quarterbacks, but what are you going to do?
Yeah, it seemed like overall a pretty reasonable draft room, I'd say.
Yeah, and also this guy who took Chase and Higgins and then skipped over on Joe Burrow was interesting to me, but I guess maybe he's thinking Chase and Higgins are going to do it with the backup quarterback in Cincinnati. I don't know.
Maybe.
Maybe
Yeah,
it's hoping Burrow would fall to him.
it's always so hard to see like the path for a team that doesn't hit on the full stack. Like when you grab 2 or 3 wide receivers and you miss on the quarterback, it's like how do I even get there? Like, is this even possible?
Well, so
Especially in a tournament. But yeah, I mean, like you said,
yeah,
maybe it's backup quarterback. I mean, you could have weeks where Joe Burrow's scoring 35 points and you just get lucky and Mahomes scores 37, right? Like
right.
something like that could certainly unfold.
And a lot of people say like the stack, the quarter. I think Liam Murphy said on the high stakes, but I think he said the quarterback is the least important part of the stack, which I've
Mhm.
heard that elsewhere. Also, like there is more merit than I think we assume to stacking teams without the quarterback. Like it's
Mhm.
tougher in the playoff weeks where like you really need a spike week from the full stack. So it's like
Yeah.
but like for the regular season at least, I think that there's positive correlation. Like you're betting on the Bengals doing it with when you take both Chase and Higgins, you're just betting on the Bengals having a huge year.
Mhm.
But yeah, to me, I always prefer taking the quarterback there. I would not have let him go there, but I guess he took Mahomes. I'm also sounds like you're similar to me in that like the week 17 thing is like, yeah, it's a factor, but not a huge factor for you. Like to me, him taking Mahomes there when he took both of the Bengals and then not taking Burrow, it's like, well, that helps for you for week 17 having that correlation, but like you also want to have correlation throughout the year. So to me, that's not like ideal taking Mahomes with that stack and not taking Burrow.
Yeah,
Um,
I'd lean towards team stacks being more important than game stacks, but I
oh,
mean at
for
the
sure.
same time, it's like all the money's won in week 17.
Yeah.
So team stack can help you get there, but yeah, the game stack still still pretty important. For what it's worth, I do think like if you draft Chase Higgins and then you miss on Burrow, I think it makes a lot of sense in those builds to grab 3 quarterbacks because in the hypothetical where you make it to week 17 and the Bengals go off. Having that extra quarterback to chase down Burrow's score, I do think could be pretty helpful. I'm not sure what you think about that, but that's
No, yeah,
something I
that's
found myself doing when I miss on my stacking QB.
Yeah, it's a really interesting thought process there. Just trying to have somebody else that can match him, having one more bullet to try to match that quarterback
Yeah.
production from Burrow. Yeah, it's interesting. And I feel like I misrepresented it. So you are a big Week 17 guy. Like yes, I'm 100% with you. Like obviously Week 17 is the most important. I think still like sort of halfway there in terms of the like, do I need to game stack? Just because to me
Mhm.
it's like, well, we talk about it with DFS, like yeah, game stacking helps, like it's added correlation, but it's not like the be all end all. Like I think you absolutely need to stack your quarterback with a pass catcher or two in DFS, but like a lot of times even like DFS where it's like just 1 week, you'll still see a lot of the top players not necessarily have a bring back. So to me the bring back is like, yeah, it's helpful, but it's not like you necessarily like teams can have a stack can go off without anybody on the opposing team doing all that well. So I don't know. It's tough for me. Like I do think like yes, it's absolutely. I like having that added correlation when it works out. I don't reach around ahead to get that. It's more of a tiebreaker for me.
Yeah, it's certainly it's more of like a luxury thing, and it's just something to think about while you're drafting. But yeah,
Yeah.
obviously not the most important thing ever. But even just for peace of mind, you make it to week 17, you make it to the finals. You want to look at your team and just see all Chiefs and Bengals, right?
Yeah. If I ooh, I just got a DM from Scott Barrett. That's fun. I'll have to read that.
Those are always exciting.
Yeah. I what was I gonna say? Um if I did have it memorized like Chris does, like the week 17 stuff, I probably would factor it in more, to be honest with you. Like
Uh-huh.
I'm like, yeah, it's a tiebreaker for me, and I do factor it in with like the games that I have memorized, but I probably would. So it probably is a little bit of a leak for me to not have the week 17 stuff memorized because I'm sure I
Mhm.
would factor in just a little bit more if I did know which teams are playing in week 17. So
Yeah.
so
I
maybe
mean,
I'm underselling it.
like I think a final note too on like best ball analysis in general is that like this is such a nascent industry. Like we are using how many best ball slates have we had? 3 or 4, right? Like we're
Right,
making
exactly.
oftentimes sweeping conclusions about a game that we just don't have a ton of data on. So I do think if you have some weird idea for a strategy and you're drafting tons of teams, I mean, go for it. Like there's a lot that you can do. You can certainly drift outside of, in DFS. We figured out a lot of the best practices. I don't think it makes a ton of sense to drift super far from convention there, but
Yep.
in best ball, I certainly think it can, just given the limited sample and the fact that oftentimes people are being like, oh, this is clearly the optimal strategy just based on Best Ball Mania 2 and Best Ball Mania 3
Right.
data,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
isn't necessarily correct.
Yeah. And tying this in sort of to the week 17 stuff, and like what we don't know exactly. So Chris actually, so I think actually me and Scott have followed kind of the same path where we're both like, yeah, week 17 is probably overrated. And then Chris came at us with the info on not that many people are actually stacking week 17.
Yeah.
So then I'm like, okay, so maybe I should be like, if it is
Mhm.
something that not everybody's doing, well then, it clearly is, there is added correlation there. So that's
Yeah.
why I've started to buy into the week 17 stuff a little bit more. I overestimated how many people were doing it, I think.
Yeah, I think it's easy to think that like everyone is playing like, the analysts you see on Twitter, like, like we are, and because we're in this little bubble, when in reality, best ball appeals to a ton of casuals. Like I've had multiple friends text me and be like, hey, I just started doing underdog drafts, and they're more like casual fantasy football players. Like this is the vast majority of people doing drafts are not on fantasy Twitter grinding Scott Barrett
Yeah,
tweet threads.
absolutely.
They're
Yeah.
they're just firing up drafts at their lunch break or whatever. So
Yep.
yeah, I think that's a great point on week 17.
Jake, so we need to, I need to get prepping for my MLB Live Before Lock that's coming up in 45 minutes here. But I really appreciate you coming on. This is really fun to have you on once again. This is only our second stream together. I hope that you and I will do more streams in the future, because it's always a great time. But in the meantime, where can people find you?
Over at Twitter, at Jake Tribbey, can find all my tweets, all my articles, tweet them out over there, and then fantasypoints.com for all my written content, most of the shows that I do over there. Yeah,
Are you
it's
on Threads yet?
what was that?
Are you on Threads yet?
I am not on Threads.
Okay.
I need to get on that because everyone has migrated over and Twitter
They
is
really
totally
haven't.
dead. Yeah, I know.
Right. Okay.
It was really silly. Like 2 days
Yeah.
of you got to get over to Threads, and then
Yeah.
just no one did it at all. So, but yeah, no, all my stuff is on Twitter. I'm going to try to really do like a ton of content in August because it's engagement
Nice.
central. So yeah, and I should have some. I'm actually working on a week 1 DFS article right now. The way too
Nice.
early look about week 1 DFS, and hopefully I can get a few more off-season pieces done. But yeah, catch me on Twitter, catch me at fantasypoints.com. Really the only 2 places to find my stuff.
All right. Make sure you catch Jake, because again, he is the fantasy football writer of the year from 2022. You're going to want to read his stuff. Great info there. Thanks a lot, Jake. Thank you guys for watching. Good luck this year.